I didn't know what was going on at the time and spent a lot of time doubting my husband. This was almost 10 years ago when I was in my 30s and had recently married him. My husband worked so hard even before we got married, and I expected life with him to be difficult. But he was never home for long and I felt very lonely. At first, I tried to let my husband relax at home during the rare times he was there. But my frustration grew, and I started being harsh with him every time I saw him. My husband would try to calm me down, but if he saw I was still unhappy, he started to ignore me. I wanted him to pay attention to me no matter how busy he was with work because we were married. This feeling took over me and I couldn't see my husband clearly anymore. Whenever I picked a fight with him, he would always say, "I'm going to settle down soon, and then we'll go to that island you like." But this never happened. "Work is more important than me, isn't it?" I said. "If so, don't force yourself to come home. I'm tired too, and seeing you so exhausted makes me sad." No matter how many hurtful things I said, he never took it seriously. I started feeling that our marriage was coming to an end. Soon my husband could tell I wasn't even angry at him anymore and had no feelings for him. I didn't suspect anything at first because he worked in a department with many business trips. But one day I found a receipt and membership card for a hotel near our house in his suit pocket after he came home from a business trip. The receipt showed he had stayed at the hotel on a day when he was supposed to be out of town for work, and he had earned points for more than one night. As a successful businessman, my husband was quite popular with the ladies at work. I guessed that he had found another woman to be with. Why should I have a hard time when he is enjoying being with another woman, I thought. So I went out at night despite my husband's infidelity and made plans on weekends too. It was fun for a while, but eventually I got tired. I was tired of forcing myself to smile and not being able to truly enjoy myself. Perhaps it was finally time for my husband and me to be free. We were both avoiding each other, not facing each other as husband and wife. It would be better if my husband was happier with someone other than me. I suppose it's time for me to move on to the next chapter of my life. But this was the husband I used to love until I realized I didn't want to spend the rest of my life with him. It took a lot of courage for me to ask for a divorce. I also wondered if there was really no other option but to end it. But it seemed that my husband had a new girlfriend. After days of thinking about it, I made a decision and sent a text message to my husband's cell phone. "Will you come home early today? I need to talk to you." I texted him on his cell phone. "I need to talk to you too, and I'll try to leave as soon as possible," he replied right away. I started thinking that maybe my husband didn't want a divorce even though I had already made up my mind. But then I thought, my husband is also seeking a divorce. Just thinking about it made my heart race so fast that I could hardly breathe, and I struggled to stand. His heart wasn't with me anymore, it was with someone else. Let's not cry anymore, I thought. At the very least, I wanted to end things with a smile. I made my decision and waited for my husband to come home. He returned shortly after 9 p.m. He had lost a lot of weight unexpectedly. His kind eyes and tone of voice were the same, but there was a gap between us that seemed impossible to close. My husband, who was never a man of many words, kept looking down and remained silent except for a few words while I spoke. I wanted to end the conversation with my husband in a respectful manner because I felt he was making a fool of me. We were a married couple, albeit for a short time, and we were about to divorce, so why wouldn't he tell me how he felt? I became increasingly angry and started arguing with him. However, my husband remained silent and listened to what I had to say. I wanted him to say something, so I told him that I knew about his new girlfriend. He probably thought I was unaware. If he knew I knew everything, he would become impatient and make one excuse after another after hearing my words. My husband looked at me in surprise, then smiled briefly. After a short pause, he asked, "What do you know?" His joking tone made me laugh, which made him laugh too. For the first time in a long while, we laughed together, despite the serious topic. I was so happy to be able to laugh with my husband like we used to. After that, we were able to talk again, which felt strange. Maybe it was because he knew I was aware of the affair. My husband seemed more relaxed. "Let's stop attacking each other. I don't want to leave you because I don't like you," he said. He agreed to my proposal, and we decided to clean our room and share our belongings so we could leave at any time. The things we packed were all precious memories, but I wanted to keep them hidden for a while. My husband, who usually kept things for years, didn't hesitate to throw them away today. His kindness overwhelmed me even more. "Take anything you want. It's all my fault, so this is my atonement," he said. When the room was clean and tidy, we only had each other's belongings left. My husband's eyes seemed to fill with tears as he said this. Did he feel sad as he cleaned up? It was clear to me because I felt the same way. "You still have time to think about it, don't you? Let's clean up one step at a time," I said. After cleaning up the mess, I decided to take a break for the rest of the day. I took a bath to clear my mind. I knew I could get compensation from my unfaithful husband, but it was clear that our relationship had already ended. Besides, I didn't want to tarnish my memories of him any further. As I was getting ready for bed after the bath, my husband entered the bedroom. He climbed into bed and gently drew me into his arms. "Hey, this is weird, and I feel bad for your girlfriend," I said. My husband replied quietly, "Just one more time, I want to be by your side." I stiffened slightly. He was trembling as he wrapped his arms around me. "Are you crying?" I asked him, but he didn't respond. I noticed his body felt lighter and bonier as I stroked his back. "Are you sure you're well? You seem to have lost some weight," I said. His body stopped shaking. "I've been cutting weight," he said, pulling away and taking a deep breath. "Okay, is there anything else I should know? Are you sure you're okay?" It had been a long time since I touched my husband's body, and I was surprised at how different it felt. He used to be stocky and muscular, even when he was busy, because he enjoyed working out. But he told me, "She likes me like this." I felt sad again. He was doing it for her. Why doesn't he just forget about me if he enjoys being with her so much that he loses weight? I see. Then there's no need to cry because it's the last day, or is it tears of joy? To keep my sadness at bay, I said something sarcastic that I didn't need to say. "You're still the same. I like that part of you too. I wish you a happy life from tomorrow. I'll be praying for you wherever you are," my husband said lightly. After saying that, my husband began to snore. He was always a man who did things at his own pace until the end. "I hope so as well," I murmured to his sleeping face and then fell asleep. I overslept the next day because I had stayed up late cleaning the room the day before. When I woke up, my husband was no longer in bed. In the living room, I found an A4-sized envelope on the table. Inside, there was a bank book and a bunch of documents. It was all related to our marital property. There was also an unusually large sum of money in the bank book under my name. I found the divorce papers in a small envelope. My husband's section was already filled out, so all I had to do was complete and submit mine. Panicking, I dialed my husband's cell phone, but it was disconnected. It seemed he had canceled it. I spent several days asking his parents and friends about his whereabouts, but no one would tell me. I had no choice but to contact his company, where I discovered that my workaholic husband had resigned a few months before. It would have made sense if he had a new girlfriend and left, but why go to such lengths? Why didn't anyone tell me anything? I grew suspicious of people, and there seemed to be no way to contact my husband. The mental fatigue that had been building up since before the divorce nearly crushed me. My husband had gone through the trouble of arranging compensation for me, and now that I was free, I decided to spend some time in a place I really enjoyed. I went to the remote island we had visited once together. It took nearly a day to reach from the mainland. About 3,000 people lived on the island, which was beautiful and peaceful. My husband had promised we would return to the island once his work was completed. I missed my husband, but maybe what I needed now was the peace and quiet of that place. I quit my job and moved to the remote island. A few months later, after renting my house to someone else, I made a risky move. I knew I couldn't stay in my house any longer. I'm not sure how my husband paid off the mortgage, but I know he worked very hard. There were too many memories to keep living alone in that house. I didn't want to waste my husband's efforts, so I didn't just let it go. There were many strange things, but I couldn't ask my husband about them anymore. I planned to spend time on this quiet island, relaxing and letting myself go. I began to adjust to island life and became acquainted with my neighbors. I had enough assets to live a normal life without working, but I realized that doing nothing was even more depressing. So I started working as a sort of helper, assisting elderly neighbors with their problems. Initially treated as an outsider, I was relieved to be accepted as one of the islanders as I became more used to the work. While settling in, I learned from a coworker that a new client had arrived from the main island for medical treatment. He had become ill and chosen this island as his final residence because no treatment was available. Moving to this island with no medical facilities would be difficult unless you were very prepared. I thought it would be challenging to be in charge, especially considering his condition. When the new client requested a visit and I was the only one free, I was nervous. We arrived at the small house on a hill with an ocean view. The house had been vacant for a long time and had been renovated to be livable, just enough to keep the wind and rain out. I wondered if this was the best place for him to spend his final days. With concern, I rang the doorbell. "Come in," a small voice said, barely audible. I gave my usual greeting and entered. I found my client sitting in front of a window, the sun and wind streaming in. I couldn't see his face because it was backlit, so I squinted as I approached. "It's a pleasure to meet you today, sir." As I looked at the face that turned to me, I was speechless. My ex-husband sat there. We were both taken aback and just stood there, staring at each other. My ex-husband started the conversation with a mischievous smile, saying, "You found me out." I was so confused by his unexpected presence and the information I had heard at work that I couldn't speak properly. He took my hand and pulled me to sit next to him. He held my hand until I calmed down. As I sat there, unsure of what to say, I heard a voice at the door. I wiped my tears and opened it to find an elderly man standing there. He looked surprised by my tear-streaked face but bowed, went inside, and sat down next to my ex-husband. "How are you doing today?" the elderly man asked in a soft voice. My ex-husband said everything was fine and began chatting with him. I realized the elderly man was likely the island's only doctor. I remembered that there were no hospitals on the island, and that the clinic nurse and doctor were essential. It seemed my ex-husband had come to the island to spend his last days here. Even though it was his choice, I listened closely to their conversation, wondering if there was anything I could do to help. After about 10 minutes of casual talk, the doctor left. I couldn't help but run after him. He seemed startled by my flustered appearance, but when I told him about our relationship, he seemed to understand. I asked the doctor about my ex-husband's condition and future treatment, but he said he couldn't tell me anything without my ex-husband's consent. The doctor told me that my ex-husband wouldn't be able to walk by himself very soon, and that it was sad for him to spend his final days alone. He asked me to be there for him. I was shocked. I wondered what had happened to my ex-husband's girlfriend. I walked back to the house, feeling heavy-hearted. My ex-husband was waiting for me and greeted me with a smile, as if he knew I had spoken to the doctor. "You're back," he said. Since I couldn't be without him, I asked if I could stay the night. His house was minimal, just a few pieces of luggage and some feedings. This was the first time we had slept together since discussing our divorce. As we snuggled under the covers, we talked about how we ended up here. I wanted to ask about his illness, but decided it wasn't the right time to bring up painful subjects. Instead, we reminisced. I asked if he had brought his girlfriend to the island before I came, but he just laughed and avoided answering, suggesting that something sad had happened. I was careful not to press further and hurt his feelings. The next day, I told my employer what had happened and took some time off. I wanted to spend my ex-husband's remaining time with him. I pushed him around the island in a wheelchair, showing him places I remembered from our previous visit and some new sights. It was fulfilling just to be together. I wish we had been this close when we were married. Even after the divorce, I found that my feelings for him had only grown stronger, but there was nothing I could do about it now. I knew that if I told my husband what was happening, he might get confused. So, like a supportive friend, I decided to stay by his side. The good times were short-lived, and the disease was taking a serious toll on him. His physical strength declined rapidly. He could no longer go out or even take the walks he had been looking forward to. Simple daily tasks became difficult, and he started falling asleep more often. The doctor visited every day, and the only small comfort was that my husband was no longer in pain. I struggled to accept that this was the way things were, and that he might be leaving me soon. I stayed close to him all the time, never leaving his side, so he wouldn't be alone if he woke up. Sometimes he would wake up and share details from his dreams or talk about old memories as if they were recent. I cherished these moments, but they also deepened my sadness. Eventually, my husband stopped waking up. When he did, I read in his favorite books and described the sights and sounds around me, hoping he could still understand. I wanted to tell them about a beautiful sunset one day, so I held his hand and tried to speak to him. His hand was cold, and he was barely breathing, with his chest moving irregularly. I panicked and called the doctor, who said he would come right away. While waiting for the doctor, I felt as if my heart was being torn apart by the situation. I hoped it was just a misunderstanding and wanted reassurance that everything would be all right. When the doctor arrived, he checked my husband and said, "His blood pressure has dropped significantly. Let him go in peace. I believe he wants you to stay with him, so I'll step back. Don't worry, I'll be nearby if anything happens. Please stay with him." The doctor said goodbye to my husband and left. I knew this moment would come, but it was still incredibly hard. "I was so happy to have met you," I whispered to my husband, holding his hand. There had been challenges, but I truly loved him. He squeezed my hand back, which, though medically impossible, felt real to me. Soon after, he took his last breath and passed away peacefully. I cried a lot, but I was grateful to have been there with him at the end. After he died, I was so busy with arrangements and the burial that I didn't have time to grieve properly. When I finally got home and started sorting through his things, I found a huge pile of letters. Going through them, I found his familiar handwriting and was struck by nostalgia. My husband had written many letters to me. I remembered how much effort I had put into staying close to him. His letters began on the day we reunited. He had moved here hoping to see me again and was surprised and thrilled to find me. Reading his joyful and humorous letters made me smile. The letters included dates and showed that he had written to me every day. As his illness progressed, his handwriting became messier and the letters grew shorter, reflecting his worsening condition. As I read, I came across a letter revealing the truth about our divorce. He wrote about how his illness started during our marriage. He had discovered there was no effective treatment, only side effects from the last hope treatment. My husband planned the divorce because he didn't want me to spend my life caring for him while he was sick. Unfortunately, I had fallen into his trap. He never thought I would suspect another woman, but he didn't deny it either. He believed he could make up for it by giving me a lot of money as compensation. Since I no longer needed medical treatment, he wanted to sell all his assets so that I could live freely. Reading his hurtful words, I felt devastated. Tears flowed uncontrollably. Then there was a knock at the door. I quickly wiped my tears and opened it to find my doctor standing there. "Why are you here, doctor?" I asked. He handed me a sealed envelope that looked exactly like the one from my husband. He explained that my husband had written a few letters before falling into a coma and had asked him to give them to me. I couldn't refuse, the doctor said. "This is the last letter. He asked me to give it to you when you returned home." I thanked the doctor and read the final letter alone. Inside, the letter was a thin, clear note that simply said, "Thank you, I love you." Our hearts remain connected. I said aloud, "I love you too," and felt as if my husband's portrait was smiling at me. Now, decades after my husband's death, I still live on the island, officially recognized as a resident. I built a grave next to where my husband's house once stood. I'm sure he still looks out the window every day. I plan to join him one day and am at peace, surrounded by our memories. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I'll see you in the next video.